Manuela Caiani is Associate Professor at the Institute of Scienze Umane e Sociali at the Scuola Normale Superiore of Florence. Her research interests focus on Europeization and social movements, right-wing extremism and populism in Europe and the USA, political mobilization, and the internet. She will talk about the dark side of the web, European and American extreme right groups, and the internet.
Does it work? Yes. Okay. So, thank you for the invitation, of course. And I am a political sociologist, and I'm going to present now some data of a project about extreme right on the web. Extreme right groups, either political parties, but also no parties organization. So it means all the cultural milieu made of extreme right cultural association, music groups, youth association, nostalgic and revisionist, negationist groups. So all the cultural milieus that usually is not very well studied by scientists, but usually it is exactly the milieu that announce that favorite the success of political parties when they present to elections. So this project is a project that has been founded by the Austrian National Banks and is a comparative case study project including 5 European democracies and the United States. So France, England, Italy, Germany and Spain. There is also a current project, a sort of second step project that I'm going to is still ongoing, where I try to reproduce the model of this project focusing on the West, on the extreme right and the use of the web, so the political activism of the extreme right on the web in Eastern and Central European countries. This project is still ongoing and the first data will be available in 2018. So what is the project about specifically? It is about the potential role of the internet for extremist right-wing organizations, particularly with a view to the identity building process helped by the internet, the organizational contact that this kind of organization build nationally but also cross-nationally on the web, and finally the potential role of the internet for extreme right mobilization, either online but also offline. A bit of a couple of words on the background. Usually the internet is considered, and also in political sociology, is considered a powerful tool for global thinking, political participation, civic virtues of society, and so on and so forth, all positive things. However, it also embodies a dark side, which is not widely understood, is not widely studied. Indeed, usually about the radical activism on the web, what we have, I mean, in academic literature, we have a sort of abstract debate, very much normative, but with few support of empirical data. We have a lot of empirical studies about the use of the internet by left-wing movements. No? Everything started with a global movement in Seattle. More recently, there is plenty of studies about the positive, let's say, mobilization, democratic mobilization, thanks to the internet. But very few is known about the radicalism on the web, unless more recently, let's say after September 9/11, about radicalism from religious groups. So this is why in my department, we had this idea, okay, let's look at the extreme right, and not only the extreme right during electoral campaign, but let's look at all the extreme right, political party, no political party groups, even violent neo-Nazi organizations. So the two empirical questions that guided this project were to what extent and in which ways, so quantity of political activism online by these groups, but also strategies, forms. So in which ways do right-wing extremist groups use the internet for their identity mobilization, and so on and so forth. But also, do different types of extreme right organizations use the internet for different goals and purposes? So do they have different strategies? And this is actually was our theoretical model. I don't want to spend words on that, just to let you know that basically we try to go beyond the descriptive part in which we described the degree and forms of political activism on the web, distinguishing between communication on the web, propaganda, the use of the web for virtual debate among like-minded people, the use of the web for mobilization and recruitment. So this was our dependent variable, as we say in methodological terms. But also we try to explain what the variation of our of the political activism by the extreme right according to the country and according to the type of organization. And in order to do that, we relied on some hypotheses and concepts deriving from social movement studies and also political communication studies, more particularly underlining how much the political, cultural, and technological opportunities of a country can shape the degree and the forms of extreme right political activism, but also at the same time, the actor's resources, so the actor offline characteristics can influence their political activism online. So what we did, basically, I'm going now to present only two work packages. The one was the work package in which, wow, apparently I finished my presentation before. Oh, I really don't know how to go back. Okay. Yes, the first part was what I called the dark web collection. So actually what we did was to map all extreme right groups in these 6 countries, all extreme right groups with a presence online. We map only websites. So this is also what I have to, like a sort of premise to say we did only part of the job, because we know that websites are only one side of the coin. These kind of groups are very well active and skillful in using Twitter, Facebook, but we only map all the websites. And what we found basically among 100 and 150 extreme right websites per country and 900 in the United States. We did a map and we used social network analysis in order to understand the structure of these virtual communities online. The basic question was, are these structures cohesive? Are they segmented? What are the main central actors of the extreme right that are able to, let's say, be hegemonic on the communication of the sector? And the second part actually was a systematic web content analysis. And when I say systematic, I mean that we used a code book. So we were like 7 coders. We used a formalized code book in order to understand for each website how much the internet was used for these several functions by the organization. So in order to diffuse its communication, fundraising, ideology, propaganda. So for each of these big dimensions of our interest, we had many, we say, lower level indicators. So why I insist on this methodological part, and then I will move to the findings, because in order to let you know that this was, let's say, I think the first comparative study of these sides on extreme right and the web. So far, when we started, there were only single case studies, very, very interesting, but only giving us a picture, not systematic, and not, let's say, with possibility of generalization, or at least finding some trends. Okay, so, yes, of course, the part of the web content analysis was based on the scanning of all these websites. Okay, so what we found? First finding, we found that the extreme right in all the 6 countries that we analyzed rely a lot on the web in order to build a dense net of national contact between them. Here you can see probably I should also have some pointer, but I don't want to risk, okay. You have the shape of the structures of the virtual communities for Italy, and Italy was very similar to UK, and the German extreme right virtual community that was also very similar to France. I don't know why I didn't put France and UK as well there. And here you have the US network and the Spain network. What I can tell you very briefly, although all these organizations rely a lot on the web for connecting to each other nationally, the shape of the network resulting, the structure of these communities is very different from one country to another. In Italy and UK, what we found using several measures of social network analysis like density, average, cohesion, so a lot of mathematics, we found that the structure can be classified according to what is called polycephalous structure. So a structure which is at one point segmented and centralized. So in this structure, there are no actors able to centralize the communicative flows of the network, but there are only local heroes. So let's say this structure is not very well conducive to collective mobilization. And however, for a policy maker's point of view, this structure is also the most difficult to be, let's say, disturbed, because even if you delete some leaders, some local leaders, the other one survive. This is something that doesn't happen in a structure like the German one or the French one, which is called star structure. It means that here you have a very centralized sector in which all the peripheral actors rely on some and few central extreme right organizations. And in the case of Germany and France as well, these central extreme right organizations were mainly political parties and youth political organization linked to political party. So basically the institutional version of the extreme right. This is, I should have put this slide before, by the way. This is just to show you that in all of these 6 countries, the extreme right that we found online is a very plural family, made of all these, at least, all these different types of groups. Of course, there are many national specificities and also single issue groups. The network for the United States was even different. And it was called a decentralized network. So in this kind of network, it is quite also difficult to speak about an extreme right community, because this network is completely decentralized. And as you can see, there are also many nodes, which are, of course, extreme right organizations, not linked to any other organization. What does it mean in terms of, again, policy recommendation? Is it a network that testifies of a weakness of the extreme right in the United States, or it is something more close to what is called today also for the religious terrorism, leaderless resistance? So a specific structure, very flexible, in which the single organizations are quite autonomous in their mobilization, referring to the virtual sphere and not to physical, let's say, hierarchical structure from which to take order of activities. This is something we can think about. As for the cross-national links, we also found, as you can see, that almost 1/3 of all our organizations is internationally oriented. It means that they use links, they use the web in order to connect not only nationally but also to extreme right organizations abroad. And if you see the disaggregation, disaggregated data by country, you can see that the most internationally oriented virtual community of the extreme right are the American one and the Italian one, at least for the cases we analyzed. But also most interesting probably is the other column, in which you see that political parties are those less internationally oriented, and the best internationally oriented types of organizations are the youth one, let's say, the neo-Nazi groups and subcultural groups organization. Very often these, the basis for the coalition, international coalitions of these organizations is nothing that has nothing to do with politics, but mostly with culture, even entertainment. And so this is something also on which we could reflect, that the international coalitions are not based on politics, but on something different, but that can then turn into politics. Okay. Finding 3, the content analysis. What we found was, first of all, that the web is used by this organization, okay, for some functions more than the others. As you can see, communication information more than, like, for instance, mobilization. What is interesting to underline here is that the most innovative use of the web is made not by political party and political movement, but by subcultural youth groups that use the internet as a sort of substitute for face-to-face communication, so for the identity building and for mobilization. And I conclude with these slides that can be a basis for our further reflection about the normative problem of the use of the internet for undemocratic purposes, and also the research problems of expanding these types of studies toward different radical groups, comparing, and different countries. But for that, of course, we need funds, and so the discussion about this point is open. Thank you.